Welcome to this webinar on dignity intelligence. We are so happy to have you all here today. And I am particularly excited to share this webinar today because it is really my first time officially rolling out the concept of dignity intelligence. This is something that I've been working on for a long time. I've actually been talking about it for a really long time, but you are receiving the first official rollout of this concept. So I'm excited that you're here to share in this experience with me personally. This webinar is brought to you by Workplace Peace Institute. It is part of the New Paradigm Leadership Educational Series. If you haven't yet muted yourself, please do go ahead and mute yourself now. And then towards the end of our presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A. So I hope that you will be able to stay around for that. My name is Robin Short. I am the founder and CEO of Workplace Peace Institute. We're going to talk a little bit more about what workplace peace really means and why I think it's personally so important to our work environments. But I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself so that you understand the lens that I see the world through as it relates to how we create peace and dignity in the workplace. So I work as an organization systems design consultant. What that means is that I support organizations in very intentionally designing the way the system itself is operating. We tend to think about an organization system as culture, but culture is really the outcome of the way a system is designed. Very often we don't intentionally design organizational systems. We just kind of go in and we create our work environments kind of by default in the way that we have experienced it in the past. So what I do is I work with leaders and being very intentional about understanding how they want their workplace culture to function and then creating a system that supports that. In that capacity, I also work as a leadership development trainer and coach, and I do a lot of conflict resolution work through mediation. Here at Workplace Peace Institute, our mediation practice is very exclusively in workplace mediation, and then also very specifically around humanistic or transformative models of mediation, which includes peace-building models like restorative justice. I work as a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging consultant. And hopefully my goal is that in all the work that I'm doing, I'm really supporting individuals in being able to actualize their human potential as it relates to their contributions in the workplace. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of context to understand how the lens that I see the world through and kind of how you can anticipate maybe listening to some of the content that we provide at Workplace Peace Institute. So at the Institute, we also have a leadership academy, and our leadership academy courses are really designed to optimize competencies in human behavior, which includes communication skills, conflict resolution skills, how to interact in our relationships as leaders, as well as individual contributors through a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging lens, so that together we can create really engaged workplaces where our basic human needs and our dignity needs are honored. And you're going to learn more about basic human needs and dignity needs today in this webinar. But ultimately, we're just very focused on supporting leaders in creating a workplace culture where everyone thrives. We know that when people thrive, organizations thrive. So we have a responsibility to each other to really ensure that we're cultivating a space where we can all thrive, because it's a business imperative. But it's also important that we're supporting just the humanness of one another, so that when we leave our workplaces, we go home to the rest of our world, our family, our friends, the activities that we like to engage in, uplifted and not depleted. So today we're going to talk about dignity intelligence. To do that, we're going to explore some of the 10 essential elements of dignity, and we're going to learn more about basic human needs. We're also going to talk a little bit about some common workplace dignity violations. I'm going to share these with you so that you can kind of see the tangible element of dignity violations, but it is by no means an exhaustive list. We're going to really dig into what dignity intelligence is as it relates to a definition, the competencies that we need to develop in order to build and grow our dignity intelligence, and practices that will support us in the development of those competencies. So to get started, I want to offer huge props and an invitation to you. So huge props to Dr. Donna Hicks in her work around dignity. I came into, I was introduced to Donna Hicks' work actually through one of my students, and it changed my life. My whole entire business exists because of Donna Hicks' work. So I have just eternal gratefulness to my student for bringing this work to my attention. Her first book, Dr. Hicks's first book, is Dignity: Its Essential Role in Resolving Conflicts. Dr. Hicks was a student of John Burton, and I'm going to make this connection for you in a few minutes. And John Burton's work as a conflict resolution and international scholar and conflict resolution practitioner was really around basic human needs. And his model differs from Abraham Maslow's needs that most of us are familiar with. After her book, Dignity, which really lays out the 10 essential elements of dignity, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, she wrote the book Leading with Dignity: How to Create a Culture That Brings Out the Best in People. This work is foundational to absolutely everything we do at Workplace Peace Institute. When I read these books and started facilitating around these 10 essential elements of dignity, began to support organizational leaders and how to implement dignity in their organizational systems design, what I realized was that people could go, oh yeah, I get what this is, but they really struggled to actually activate dignity, to really integrate it into the way that they interact with the world around them, and to really integrate it in their leading styles. And I realized that was because there's some actual competencies that we need to develop in order to actualize these 10 essential elements of dignity in all that we do. And so my work on dignity intelligence is built solidly on the foundation of Dr. Hicks' work. My invitation to you, if you haven't already done this, is that you put these two books in the shopping cart of wherever it is that you buy books, because I think every human being needs to read these books, and I think every leader needs to read these books. And my hope is that they change your life the way that they did mine. So I want to talk about workplace peace as a concept. Obviously, workplace peace is the core of everything we do at Workplace Peace Institute. And the definition of peace that we work with is that workplace peace is the ability to consistently actualize human security and dignity in our professional relationships in the context of organizational culture. So peace is human security. We cannot have peace if we are not able to experience human security. We experience human security through the actualization of our basic human needs. And dignity, at its very core, is our inherent worth and value as human beings. And what that means is that as humans, we all have value. We come into this world with worth and value. What we don't come into this world with is an inherent understanding of how to honor our own worth and value, and how to honor the worth and value of others. And interestingly, we are all particularly vulnerable as human beings to having our dignity violated. So what that means is that in our everyday interactions with one another, we are not skilled in honoring the worth and value of each other. And so we unintentionally violate dignity very often in our relationships. And we do this very often in the workplace. One other piece to this that I think is really critical to understand is that our brain registers or internalizes or responds to a dignity violation in the exact same way that it responds to a physical threat. So when you experience someone violating your worth and value as a human, your body actually goes into that fight, flight, freeze mode. And we get these cortisol and adrenaline running through our body because our body is telling us that we're not safe and we need to protect ourselves. So when you experience that, your body getting really hot, or your hands begin to shake, or your voice begins to shake, or you feel like fighting, or you actually maybe experience this feeling of maybe disassociating a little bit. And yet you can look around the room and see that you're physically safe. You're probably in the experience of responding to a dignity violation. So it's really important to know that we are very susceptible to having our worth and value violated, and our body perceives it as a very real threat. And that's pretty important, and we're going to talk about that in more detail. So when we look at basic human needs and dignity needs, this model that really informs all the work that we do here at Workplace Peace Institute. And if you have been to any one of our workshops or webinars in the past, you have probably seen this model, and you're going to see it again and again each time you encounter us, because it's the framework that we really hook everything on. And this framework was developed by me really from John Burton's work around basic human needs. And where his work differs from Abraham Maslow's is that he does not believe, and I completely agree, that our human needs are hierarchical. We need and we seek all of these needs all of the time. So I need belonging as much as I need security. I need love and self-esteem and personal fulfillment as much as I need justice and safety. I need freedom and participation and cultural security at the same level that I need all of these other basic human needs. And what I believe is that our ability to consistently experience the essential elements of dignity, so the ability for us to consistently experience our inherent worth and value, is our most central human need. And I have that need for identity, both in basic human needs and in essential elements of dignity, because John Burton and Donna Hicks talk about them both, that they are both an essential element of dignity, and they are also having our identity accepted and fully embraced is a core basic human need. So our 10 essential elements of dignity. And again, I really want you to consider purchasing Donna Hicks's book, Dignity, to really dig into these 10 essential elements of dignity, is that we need to have our identity fully embraced and honored. And we can think about identity as our gender, as our sexual orientation, as our race and ethnicity, as our marital status. But if you ask a person the question, what brings you joy? Where do you go when you need to be fulfilled? What's important to you? They're going to tell you a lot about their identity, that are identity markers that are outside of some of those identity markers that we tend to think about. And I share that with you because we really cannot honor a person's identity without being in real relationship with them. If you want to fully honor my identity, you need to actually spend time getting to know me so that you understand the things that are really important about who I am. And so when we think about that in the workplace, to truly honor the identity of our coworkers, we need to spend time really knowing who they are and what's important to them about who they are, so that we can consistently be in right relationship with them. We also have an essential element, need for inclusion. And I will say that my thinking around inclusion, I think, might differ a little bit than the way Donna Hicks talks about it. So I have this connection to inclusion and belonging that I think are important to sort of parse out. Inclusion is really important. And there's a power dynamic that's associated with inclusion. If someone has the power to include me, there is also the power to exclude me. So there are some conditions that are baked into inclusion that are related to power dynamics. Whereas I believe that belonging is a higher level. Belonging is co-creation of community. I have a seat at this table, not because someone invited me to the table, but because the table inherently belongs to us all. So there aren't conditions around behavior associated with belonging. So when I think about the essential elements of dignity of inclusion, my own personal thinking is that belonging is really the higher level that we should be aiming for. We also have a need for acknowledgement that I believe is connected to recognition. So acknowledgement is, I am paying enough attention to you as a human being that I see the contributions that you're making. And I can name those very specifically. So if you think about times in your workplace when someone has said, great job, team, and it didn't feel very rewarding, it's because it didn't feel like they were actually paying enough attention to really name the quality of what was good about the work that was done. And that's where recognition comes in. Recognition is our need for feedback. It is our need for someone to say, I'm acknowledging, I'm paying attention, and I'm naming your specific contributions. And then I go one step further with feedback. I give you feedback that is supportive. I praise the things that are really great. I name when you have done a good job in a very targeted way. And I care enough about you to recognize where there's opportunities for improvement. And I'm willing to invest the time in you to support you in your development as a human being. So our essential needs for our dignity needs for acknowledgement and recognition are separate but connected. We also have a dignity need for fairness. This is impartial treatment, that we are being treated fairly and equally, and with equity in our workplace experiences. So one of the things that I have learned about fairness in my own research that I don't think is shocking, but that I thought was interesting that surfaced over and over is that in order for a person to experience their dignity need for fairness, they need to be treated fairly, but they also need to observe fairness in relationship with others. So people are very attuned to preferential treatment. So if I am being treated fairly, but I recognize that my coworker is not being treated fairly, then my actual dignity need for fairness isn't being met. We all have a dignity need for having the benefit of the doubt extended to us. I think we inherently know that, right? We all know that we want the benefit of the doubt to be extended to us, but many of us aren't particularly good at extending the benefit of the doubt to others. So really being conscious about assuming positive intent and extending benefit of the doubt. We also have a dignity need for understanding, that we want people to be careful enough with us to lean into understanding our intentions, understanding who we are, I think there's a lot of connection, excuse me, to understanding and acknowledgement, recognition, and fairness. We also have a dignity need for independence. And what I have found in my own research is that there is a through line to inclusion, acknowledgement, recognition, fairness, benefit of the doubt, understanding, and independence. So in order for me to act independently, I need to have the experience of inclusion and belonging. In order for me to act independently, I need someone to be paying enough attention to my work to be able to see and name my contributions. In order to act independently, I need someone to be paying enough attention to me that they are giving me feedback so that I can develop and grow. And I need this fairness and benefit of the doubt and understanding. So in order for individuals inside of our workplace to be autonomous and to be independent, which is a desire that we all have, we need all these other essential elements of dignity in place so that the feedback is available to us to be independent. And then once we have all of these pieces in place in terms of the actualization of these basic human needs, we also have a dignity need for accountability. And accountability is taking responsibility for our actions and doing repair work when necessary, when we've done something that has hurt another, when we have violated the dignity of others. However, um, accountability is very difficult if these other 9 essential elements of dignity aren't in place, because these other essential elements of dignity are cultivating love, they're cultivating self-esteem, they're cultivating personal fulfillment, they're cultivating psychological safety and physical safety and security. And all of those things are critically important for us to have the safety in place to be accountable. So one red flag that I have when I work with organizations who have a core value of accountability is, do you have all these other elements in place that make it accessible for people to take accountability for their actions in the workplace? So I've spent a lot of time here because it really is the foundational pieces that build on our capacity for cultivating dignity intelligence, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So I just want to highlight some common workplace dignity violations. Again, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I want you to be able to see some tangible ways that our dignity and our basic human needs might get violated in the workplace. So one is, we don't have access to the resources necessary to achieve our potential in the workplace, but we're being held accountable to our capacity to achieve our potential in the workplace. So access to resources is a way that we might experience dignity, or it's a way that dignity might actually be violated. Aspects of our personal or professional identity are exploited or disrespected. So aspects of our personal or professional identity. This might be, you are a Black marketing professional on a marketing team, and every time there is a photo shoot, you're asked to be in the photo shoot representing diversity. That would be an exploitation of identity. That might be an exploitation of identity. Depending on the workplace culture, that might feel like inclusion. But if it is not a culture that has systemic inclusion and belonging baked into it, it very well might be an exploitation. Or aspects of our personal or professional identity are disrespected. So let's say you are perhaps a member of the LGBTQ community, and you find in your workplace culture that there just isn't the safety available, the psychological safety available for you to talk about your family with the same level of freedom and comfort and ease that maybe other people who are heterosexual are able to talk about their family. So aspects of our personal or professional identity being exploited or disrespected might be a dignity violation in the workplace. We contribute to a project that we feel really proud of, and then someone else gets the credit. Or you have done really a big piece of the foundational aspect of a project, but then it's someone else's job to carry it over the finish line. And that person who carries it over the finish line is the person who gets credit. We're not recognized or praised for contributions we feel proud of. What that means is that someone's not paying enough attention to acknowledge our work, to see the things we're doing, to notice the joy it's bringing us, and then to give recognition around that. We're publicly humiliated. I have observed and witnessed town hall meetings or Zoom call meetings where people's ideas are shamed, where people are, made fun of sarcastically. And then at the end of that meeting, the person says, well, does anybody have any questions? And it's just completely silent. Nobody has questions because they have seen that public humiliation and they're not going to raise their hand to experience that. We're micromanaged. Someone is not extending enough trust to us to allow us our dignity need of independence. So they're always micromanaging us. Or we experience exclusion from our peers or leaders. I was working in a work environment many years ago in a leadership position. And this was an organization where there was a lot of bullying behavior taking place on the leadership team. The Christmas holiday came and went. There wasn't a holiday party or anything like that. I didn't think anything of it. The next year comes around, and I had done a lot of work with the leadership team, cultivating inclusion and building relationships. And this year, I started getting presents from everyone. And I was horrified because my previous holiday had taught me that we didn't do Christmas presents. And now there was gifts happening, and I didn't have a gift. Then there was a Christmas party that I was invited to. And I realized, oh, all of this was happening last year and I wasn't included. So that feeling, even though this year I was included, I had this deep recognition that I had been excluded previously. So this experience of exclusion from our peers is a dignity violation. When our work leaves us feeling unfulfilled. So when we're not being given opportunities to do meaningful work, that can be a dignity violation. When we feel excluded from workplace holidays. So different from the example that I just shared, let's say your holiday, just like this place where I worked, we celebrated Christmas. If you came from a faith tradition or a cultural tradition that doesn't celebrate Christmas, that can be a violation of cultural security in the workplace. So there's a lot of ways that we can experience dignity violations in the workplace. And this is just a very small list to help you start thinking about how we can integrate these essential elements of dignity and these basic human needs in our work in very tangible kind of ways. So there is a very through line connection to dignity in the workplace and employee engagement. So just for definition, Gallup defines employee engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in their work and workplace. So how involved we feel and how enthusiastic we feel about our work. When we experience dignity violations in the workplace, there is a direct impact on our ability to be engaged. People withdraw. They begin to sit in a defensive posture instead of leaning in and feeling vulnerability and feeling creativity and being able to really engage in critical thinking. We lean back and we take care of ourselves. And that looks like quiet quitting. So when we hear people talk about quiet quitting, that there is this movement of quiet quitting happening in their organization, what that tells me is that is a way that people reclaim dignity. We reclaim dignity by protecting ourselves from spaces where we're experiencing violations. And we're experiencing a lot of violations. So 67% of the American workforce is disengaged at work. I believe that is because 67% of the workforce is not experiencing their inherent worth and value in their workplace on some level. And so they're leaning back as a way of reclaiming dignity. Resistance efforts are efforts at dignity reclaiming or dignity protection, people respecting and honoring their own dignity. So what does that mean to us as leaders in the workplace? I believe it means we need to be more humans. And we become more human humans by really leaning into these essential elements of dignity and these basic human needs, because these are all the elements of the human condition that are really necessary for us to thrive in our individual and professional work lives. So I want to talk just a little bit about dignity consciousness. In my course, I have an online course that's available to you on our website called Dignity Intelligence. And in that course, I go into much more depth around dignity consciousness. But dignity consciousness is something that Donna Hicks, it's a phrase that Donna Hicks coined in her book, Leading with Dignity. And she defines it as a deep connection to our inherent worth and value and connection to the vulnerability we all share to having our dignity violated. So a dignity consciousness is a consciousness that we hold as we move around the world and build relationship with one another. And dignity consciousness is comprised of our capacity to be connected to our own dignity, to know that I have inherent worth and value, and that I build my relationships with others and I build my boundaries with others in such a way that protects my worth and value. That we have a connection to the dignity of others. So in the same way that I protect my own inherent worth and value, I lead in my relationships with others in such a way that I'm prioritizing basic human needs and dignity needs in my relationship with them. From a workplace perspective, we should be thinking about that. What does it look like for me to have dignity with my team members? What does it look like for me to have dignity with my colleagues? What does it look like for me to have dignity with my stakeholders, with my customers, with the community around me? And that we're connected to something greater than oneself. And we need this connection that's greater. We need a connection to something that's greater than ourselves because we need the motivation to stay in a state of dignity consciousness. So this connection to something greater than oneself, it might be your faith, it might be your religion, it might be your values, it might be the mission statement of your organization, but there is a higher calling that's keeping you connected to this concept of dignity consciousness. So building that foundation leads us to dignity intelligence. So the definition of dignity intelligence that I've created is the capacity to proficiently connect to the inherent worth and value of all human beings, to actively mitigate the violation of dignity in all instances, and to sustain a connection to something greater than oneself. So when I am intentionally leading with dignity intelligence, when I am intentionally growing my capacity for dignity intelligence, I am being very intentional about connecting to the dignity of all human beings, and I would really say all sentient beings. And I'm being very intentional to be the guardian of dignity in all instances, knowing that there is something bigger than me that's calling me to do this. So I believe the competencies that we need to develop in order to really grow our dignity intelligence and to really activate the 10 essential elements of dignity in all aspects of our life is that we need to exist in a state of humility. We need to have curiosity about the world around us. And really specifically, we need to have curiosity about the behaviors that we see in other people. And we need to have what I call homeostasis mind. And we're going to talk about each three of these in a bit more detail. So let's look first at humility. I really am drawn to the definition that Brene Brown offers in her book, Atlas of the Heart, about humility. And humility is being open to new learning combined with balanced and accurate assessment of our own contributions, including our strengths, our imperfections, and our opportunities for growth. So when I am in a state of acting on humility, I am being self-aware enough to have a balanced and accurate assessment of the way my actual and real strengths and my actual and real imperfections are influencing a situation and where I have opportunities for growth to do better. So when we think about engaging with each of these 10 essential elements of dignity, I don't think that we can do that in relationship with one another without sustaining a state of humility in our life. So humility is not downplaying yourself or your accomplishments. We see this all the time on platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook, where people say, I am so humbled by this award. I think you're actually violating your dignity by language like that. I think you're really proud of this award. It is an acknowledgement of contribution, and it is honoring. It is a demonstration of recognition. In so many ways, awards are ways that we support and elevate dignity. So when we participate in false humility, we're actually violating dignity. Humility is not low self-esteem or meekness, and humility is not letting people walk all over you. Humility is actually a space of strength. Humility is a commitment to getting it right rather than being right. So oftentimes when we are being conscious about humility, when we're being really conscious about engaging in our relationships through the lens of these 10 essential elements of dignity, we will get it wrong. We will unintentionally violate dignity. We will do this. I'm going to do it. You're going to do it. Donna Hicks is going to do it. And so we need humility in order to really stay in this space of, I am doing my very best to get it right. And sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. And humility helps us progress that path of honoring dignity. So the emotion of humility involves understanding our contributions in the context in which it's situated and in relation to the contributions of others. Um, and again, these definitions are offered by Brené Brown in her work in Atlas of the Heart. So to be in, as we build our humility muscle, and as we really lean into our work around humility, we also need to be sure that we are including and prioritizing intellectual humility. So this is a willingness to consider information that doesn't fit within our current paradigm. It's not a lack of confidence or conviction, but rather an openness to hearing others' points of view and a willingness to adjust one's beliefs when faced with new or conflicting information. In this world in which we are experiencing so much political division, I think much of this political division is a result of an absence of intellectual humility. And I think that's true no matter what political affiliation you associate yourself with. We all, as a collective in the United States, really need to grow our capacity for intellectual humility in order for us to cultivate a collective culture of dignity. So some practices that we need to put into place in order for us to really cultivate humility is we need to be highly aware of taming our ego. Be very aware of when we have unintentionally shifted into this space of being right, of pushing our ideas or pushing our desires onto another person. And to do this, we need to practice self-acceptance, accepting both areas of our strengths as well as areas of weakness, and to do this without defensiveness. We need to embrace our humanness and relinquish expectations of perfection and relinquish expectations of going it alone. Here in the United States, which is where we do the vast majority of our work at Workplace Peace Institute, we have this this idea that's sort of baked into the American DNA of rugged individualism. And the reality is that none of us came into this world alone. Nobody could be here as an individual. Our actual presence on this work required some form of community to bring us here. So it is a false narrative that we are actually designed to go it alone. So part of really cultivating humility is leaning into this awareness that we really do need one another, and that there truly is, as Martin Luther King talked about, an interrelated structure of reality. So the second competency associated with dignity intelligence is our ability to really grow our skills around curiosity, surrendering certainty. And I believe that curiosity is really the birthplace for compassion, and compassion is critically important to our ability to embrace and lean into dignity intelligence. So again, this comes from this definition of curiosity comes from Brene Brown's work in Atlas of the Heart. Curiosity requires vulnerability because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty, to really be able to say, I wonder. Some language that I adopted from an organization that I worked with, and this was really language that was baked into their cultural DNA, is I have a wondering. And that language of I have a wondering really invites curiosity, and it invites us to explore ideas that differ from ours in a way that doesn't challenge people, or in a way that doesn't lead people having the experience of being challenged. So really beginning to think about the world through this lens of I have a wondering, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to sit in a space of uncertainty. Curiosity requires inquiry and the willingness to admit to not knowing. It requires that we risk being told that we shouldn't be asking and possibly making discoveries that lead to discomfort. So you can see there's a connection between curiosity and our capacity for humility. So interestingly, we humans are hardwired for curiosity. When we are curious, we actually experience feel-good chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. Curiosity supports the release of these feel-good chemicals into our system, giving us a natural reward for this behavior. So isn't that interesting that the human body is wired for curiosity, which means that we have to be able to be humble, have to be able to lean into humility in order to really leverage this hard wiring. These hormones create a connection between the heart and the brain that create a greater sense of openness, and this results in a greater sense of connection to others, creating a shared reality based on understanding. So this research comes from the research of a mother-daughter team called Kathy Taberner and Kirsten Taberner Siggins in their book, The Power of Curiosity, to have how to have real conversations that create innovation and understanding. This was published in 2015 prior to Dr. Hicks's work being published. And you're seeing this connection already between the way the brain is wired to support us in honoring dignity need for understanding. So we really need to cultivate curiosity as an actual practice. So some ways that we can do that is by being very intentionally fully present. As I said that right then, you may have realized, oh my gosh, I was listening to this webinar and checking my email at the same time. I was listening to this webinar and scrolling LinkedIn at the same time. When we multitask, we actually are reducing our capacity for curiosity. So being really fully present, engaging in active listening, really truly listening to understand rather than listening to reply or listening to report out, really truly listening to the emotions that you're hearing, the details that you're hearing, the body language that you're seeing or experiencing. So really leaning into active listening and choosing how to listen. Am I needing to show up in this space to problem solve? Am I needing to show up in this space to understand? Am I needing to show up in this space to support? So part of being fully present and active listening is really actually understanding what type of listening is necessary for each situation so that you can really cultivate curiosity. Be ready to learn about yourself and others. Be ready to learn difficult things about yourself and others. Ask curious and open-ended questions and continuously seek to understand. Um, Embedding some of these practices into journaling can be an effective way to continue to grow your curiosity, and embedding some of these practices into other disciplines such as restorative dialogue or dialogue circles are also a way to cultivate individual and collective curiosity. And then our last competency for dignity intelligence is the cultivation of homeostasis mind. And homeostasis mind is a term that I came up with to really explore or to point us to the presence, the state of mind that exists when our nervous system is balanced, when our nervous system is well regulated, and leading to our ability to be fully present, to be very steady in our thinking, and to be emotionally and cognitively available to the needs of others. So homeostasis mind is really, really important, because what I talked about at the very beginning of this webinar is that we humans are particularly vulnerable to having our dignity violated. And we talked about some of the ways that that might show up in the workplace. If I do not have homeostasis mind, if I do not have a well-regulated nervous system, if I'm not able to be fully present, and if I'm not emotionally and cognitively available to the needs of others, I am going to pop off. I'm going to say something to get back at you. I am going to do something to discharge the aggression that's running through my body and harm the other person. I am going to violate the dignity of the other person. Or I'm going to retreat and potentially violate my own dignity. So we need homeostasis mind in order to stay in a physiological, emotional, and brain space where we are able to hold our capacity for dignity consciousness, to connect to the dignity of others, to connect to the dignity of ourselves, and to remain connected to the thing that's greater than ourselves that motivates us. So how do we cultivate homeostasis mind? Active listening. Well, I'm sorry, before I get to the practices, some additional benefits is that homeostasis minds leads to more confidence and competency in our ability to active listen, and our ability for collaborative problem solving, and our ability for productive and positive conflict resolution. When we're able to stay in this well-regulated space and be emotionally and cognitively available to others, we are able to navigate difficult situations where our ideas and maybe even our identity is being challenged. And we're able to engage in conflict resolution because we are not getting triggered, because our nervous system isn't getting activated, because we're not going into a fight or flight mode as we experience dignity violations potentially coming to us in our environment. So mindful practices are a way to cultivate homeostasis mind. And mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. So we can develop mindfulness through mindful meditation. There is a lot of apps available in app marketplaces that support us in a daily practice of mindfulness. You can find mindful meditations on YouTube. There's a lot of places that you can access mindful meditation. The key is that you're practicing meditation daily. So meditation is like building a muscle. The more you do it, the more skilled you become in it. The more skilled you become in it, the more effective it is on your nervous system. There is a lot of research that shows that you only need 10 minutes of meditation a day in order to receive the benefits of meditation. I'd like to encourage you as you grow your capacity for meditation to try to extend that to even 20 minutes a day to really reap more rewards of meditation. Take short pauses throughout your day to take a mindful breath, to take a walk outside. Um, Spend some time after this webinar kind of journaling some things that bring you joy, journaling some things that are places of resource for you where you can go to sort of refuel from the day. And then as you take short pauses throughout your everyday life, either access those resources or spend time contemplating them through mindful breathing or mindful pauses. I have found that values-aligned affirmations can be very helpful in cultivating homeostasis mind. And so what I mean by that is get clear about the values that are important for you. What are the values that really inform how you show up in the world? The values that really inform the way that you engage in your relationships? And write down a couple of affirmations that remind you of that so that you can affirm your values for yourself during times of stress. And that will support you in growing your capacity for homeostasis mind. And then merging meditation practices with other activities, such as walking, yoga, or gardening. So meditative physical practices that that can support you as you continue to cultivate homeostasis mind. So as a wrap up to dignity intelligence, it's the capacity to proficiently connect to the inherent worth and value of all human beings. We're connecting to the inherent worth and value of all human beings through these 10 essential elements of dignity and through our intentional and conscious efforts of ensuring the actualization of all of these basic human needs. And then to actively mitigate the violation of dignity in all instances. So where are we seeing these things not happening, and how are we being intentional to intervene on that? And sustaining a connection to something greater than yourself. What is the idea, the faith, the belief, the practice, the values that motivate you in this work and remain connected to that? So I want to leave you with this reality. People are complex, and we are all at different stages of development, of thought, of emotions, of actions, and interactions. All of us humans are in various stages of development. When we honor a person's dignity, we walk with them in their development. And when we expect them to be where we are, but not where they are, then we can create shame. And learning and development almost never happen in that space of shame. So to really, truly honor a person's dignity is to walk with them where they are and support them in their growth through life-affirming behaviors that really, truly support and honor each of those 10 essential elements of dignity and basic human needs. So we have some online courses that I want to make you aware of. One is social emotional intelligence. I think social emotional intelligence is a really important foundational leadership intelligence to help build on your dignity intelligence. So both of these courses, two separate courses, are 6 hours in length. They're self-paced. You can access them in bite-sized learning. And if you enroll in the course, you have access to them forever. So you don't have limited access to them. So if you want to explore those, you can go to our website at workplacepeaceinstitute.com and click on the Leadership Academy. Some additional courses that might support you as you continue to deepen your practice in growing dignity intelligence is our mindful leadership course. That's going to really help you in growing your mindfulness practice and really cultivating homeostasis mind as a leader. Trauma-informed leadership is critical to that capacity to be able to meet people where they are. as is our diversity, equity, and inclusion courses and conflict resolution courses. So all of these courses are going to help you to grow your own capacity for dignity intelligence.